There was an unspoken rule that John and Paul were the songwriters, and George was just the guitar player. Paul later admitted they never said, "Let's keep George out," but it was definitely implied. George had written his first song, "Don't Bother Me," in 1963 when he was sick in bed at a hotel. He was just fooling around with a tape recorder to see if he could write a song at all. It wasn't his best work, but it proved he could do it. However, getting his songs on Beatles albums was like pulling teeth. Even when he wrote great songs, John and Paul would reject them or ignore them completely. The media made things worse by giving each Beatle a label. John was the smart one, Paul was the cute one, George was the quiet one, and Ringo was the funny one. This meant that while John and Paul got all the attention and interviews, George was often overlooked, even though his guitar playing shaped the band's sound in huge ways. Around 1965, George started exploring Indian music and spirituality. While filming the movie Help, he picked up a sitar during a break, just out of curiosity. Something about the strange, beautiful sound stuck with him. Most people would have just put it down and forgotten about it, but George was different. He spent months learning to play it properly. In 1966, George met Ravi Shankar, one of the world's greatest sitar players. Usually, students had to wait years to learn from Shankar, but he agreed to teach George almost immediately. They traveled across India together for 6 weeks. George wasn't just learning music. He was learning about Hindu philosophy and meditation. It was becoming a huge part of his life. On October 12, 1965, George recorded the sitar part for the Beatles song Norwegian Wood. It was the first time an Indian instrument had ever been used in a Western pop song. That simple moment changed rock music forever and started a trend of bands experimenting with Eastern sounds. But not everyone in the Beatles was happy about George's spiritual journey. Paul McCartney openly made fun of George's interest in Indian music and meditation. He would roll his eyes, crack jokes, and leave the room when George was working on his Indian-influenced songs. George felt mocked and hurt. This wasn't just music to him anymore. It was deeply spiritual, and they were treating it like a joke. In 1968, the Beatles went to India to study with a spiritual teacher called the Maharishi. George wanted to meditate and focus on finding inner peace, but Paul had different plans.